on your phone or a screen immediately after training not only delays that recovery, but it also stops your body adapting to the training.
Do you ever have days where you don't want to run?
Yes, all the time. I'm not containing it. I just want to like live in the moment, and I want to feel that excitement. You're kind of so focused on the training, you lose the bigger picture of like, it's the Olympics, it's gonna be so cool to be there. Are you tempted by triathlon?
I had no interest in swimming. I couldn't enjoy anything less. Welcome back to 5 Miles Easy. On the show today, we're answering your questions. Thank you so much to all our listeners who have sent them in on Instagram. We've got so many great topics that we are going to cover. So Rose, shall we get straight into it?
Let's do it. So first of all, we are going to talk about some training related questions before we go on to more nutrition and mindset things as well. So first question, have you ever had a plateau in training and how do you get out of it? Now, Steph, I feel like this is one for you because I know recently you've had a bit of a downward roller coaster journey and now you are on the way back up. So do you want to just share a bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of accept that running, especially when you're getting into it, it's not always going to be, you know, progression, and you do have those dips. So recently, off the back of, I guess, a positive training block going into 2 Oceans, and that was week after week, I was ticking off really good sessions, kind of recovered from 2 Oceans, and then a few weeks into training, I just didn't feel right. All of my sessions felt super hard, and I just wasn't really getting anything out of them, and I just felt very tired, sore, and I kind of just had to make the decision to just take it a lot easier for a little while and accept, like, you know what, yeah, it might have a knock-on effect to my fitness, but clearly my body's needing the break. Yeah, just kind of accepting that these times happen and you need to look at the bigger picture of where you want to get to with your training, and sometimes just taking a bit of a break or an easier few weeks is what's going to get you back on track to improving again. You can't always just be on that upward trend of having amazing sessions every week. So yes, I definitely have plateaued many times over the years, but you just have to trust that it will get good again and listen to your body and, respect it, treat it well, and yeah, you're going to have good days again.
And maybe just mix up the training as well. I feel like sometimes if you're at a bit of a plateau, just doing something a bit different can really break the cycle.
Okay, Rose, what is your number 1 tip for someone's first marathon?
My tip would be, kind of want to give 2 because 1 is just enjoy it. Like, it's your first one, and so it's going to be a BB. You're going to learn a lot from it, but just try and kind of soak up the atmosphere because it will absolutely fly by. And I think if you can just come out of it having like a really good experience, that will genuinely be the biggest win of the day. And then another one, I mean, probably everyone says this, but just kind of be strict on your pace at the start. It's so easy to go off really quickly, and then it does make the end really uncomfortable. So I think if you can just pace the first half, and remember that at halfway you should be feeling super comfortable. It should literally feel like a walk in the park at halfway. I think if you can just kind of be really strict on that, then it will make for a much more enjoyable experience. We've actually got another marathon question here. What is your favourite big marathon sessions and what kind of interval sessions do you do?
Oh, I like that question because honestly, my favourite type of training is marathon training because of the really long sessions that you get to do. Oh, what's my favourite one? Okay, I think my favourite is, which it honestly sounds so disgusting, but is when you do like a 4 or 5 by 5K with a float in between. So you would do the 5K reps at marathon pace, and then your float would be like 30 to 40 seconds slower than marathon pace. So it ends up being a very long time where you're putting in effort because the floats aren't slow. But I find it quite interesting because I find that when you've been doing that pace for the 5K, it makes the floats feel easy, even though it's not your easy run pace. But I think if you can tick that session off, it's a really good confidence boost that you are in a good place with whatever your target marathon pace is. And it's a good way of breaking up each effort, so you can practice your fueling as well. I think 5K chunks are quite nice just mentally, where you know, okay, after each one of these I'm going to take a gel or a drink or whatever. It's a good way of practicing that too.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one.
Okay, Rose, let's talk about your training for Paris. We've got a couple questions on this actually. What's been your peak mileage for Paris, and how many sessions / long runs have you done each week?
My peak mileage, I've gone up to 115 miles, which is pretty much what I did for Chicago, I think, as well. Sessions and long runs, again, really similar. So I normally do, it kind of changes a little bit throughout the block, but I'll do 2 sessions in the week, and one will be a tempo session and one will be a faster speed session. Although, I mean, when I say speed, I mean speed for a marathoner, which is not that fast. And then a long run at the weekend or a marathon pace session. So it's pretty kind of standard, to be honest, and very similar to what I did for Chicago, except for the fact that the sessions are a bit different because I'm doing some hill work. So we've got a few questions on recovery here, which is very topical given that our last episode was with Aidan on recovery. But a few things we didn't actually cover. How often do you stretch as runners? Is it every day or rarely? I mean, from my perspective, I would say pretty ad hoc. I don't do routine stretching, but what about you, Steph?
Yes, I would agree. I'd say the only time I really stretch is just before a session. Kind of like I'll do my drills and then I'll do a few basic stretches just so I feel kind of loose and ready to go for the session. But other than that, no, I don't really stretch. But I think Aidan's discussed this before, where in terms of a recovery method, it's kind of doing what makes your body feel good. So I think for the both of us, we both get massage, and for me that's definitely something that kind of helps make my legs feel better. So I don't know about you, if that's the sort of the alternative to stretching.
Yeah, same. I do foam roll frequently. Pretty much every day I foam roll, actually. So I would say that's what I do instead of stretching. And yeah, you're right. It just, for me, it makes me feel recovered and makes my muscles feel better. Whereas sometimes stretching can almost feel like it's just doing a little bit too much. And there's definitely a balance, especially with long distance running. You don't want to stretch too much because you need a certain amount of tension in your muscles to be able to do the work. So yeah, I feel like stretching, there is kind of mixed research on it as to how effective it is and when it should be used. Whereas from my understanding, foam rolling is like pretty good recovery and not much negative consequences to it. So yeah, that's what I do. And then another question linked to recovery is winding down after a hard long run or a race. This is such a good question because it's something I struggle with so much. After a race, I literally won't sleep for like 2 nights. And again, I think we did touch on this with Aidan, but I know it's one that so many people do struggle with. So any tips for that? I mean, I definitely have not nailed this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think after a race, it's so hard just because of the adrenaline in your body, and you probably, I mean, a lot of people take caffeine before a race as well. So I think with racing, I very much accept that getting to sleep might be a struggle, and just knowing, okay, well, if you've raced, you're probably going to have a few easy days anyway. So one bad night's sleep's not going to be the end of the world. I guess if you're struggling with sleep after every hard run or every long run, just finding small changes that might help. So just making sure you're refueling well, because I know that's one thing. If your body's kind of underfueled, it can prevent you sleeping as well. And I realize maybe not everyone has this option, but if you're able to run kind of earlier in the day rather than running hard or long in the evening, then it's just going to give your body a bit more time to recover in the day so that you can settle by the time you need to go to bed. And then just those hours before going to bed, just kind of doing very calm activities that will just help your body relax, and hopefully you should be able to get to sleep a bit easier.
I have another good fact on this that I learned quite recently, is it's to do with being on phones and screen time after you do a hard session. So after you do a hard session, your cortisol rises and your body's obviously also trying to recover. And being on your phone or a screen immediately after training not only kind of delays that recovery, but it then also spikes your cortisol again. So it makes it a lot harder to wind down, and then it can really disrupt your sleep later. But it also kind of stops your body adapting to the training as well, because you're using like that energy and the stimulus on your phone and on your screen rather than your body making the adaptations. So if you can like stay off your phone for 20 minutes after you do a hard session, it can apparently really help you just reduce those cortisol levels and wind down better. So that was my fact that I learned the other day. I've been trying to implement it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm going to implement that because I didn't know that. So yeah, no looking at the phone screen. Okay, what about how to slow your pace for marathon training without feeling like you're losing speed?
I have to say I keep some faster work in even when I'm marathon training, just for that reason, because I think if you do all your sessions at marathon pace, it's going to feel hard. You know, you are going to adjust to that pace, whereas if you can keep some speed work in, it just makes the marathon pace feel easier. I think there's also got to be a bit of acceptance that your speed sessions might be slower because you're doing higher mileage and longer tempo sessions, so you're going to be a bit tired of going into it. But that's fine. I think just keeping some kind of speedy efforts in can really help with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then also just making sure that you are doing the slow, easy runs as well, so that when you do the speed work and the marathon sessions and the long runs, you've kind of recovered in between those sessions, and knowing that doing those easy runs is also not going to make you lose speed, because that's actually how you'll be able to work harder in those hard sessions.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, what about strength training? How many times per week are you doing strength training?
So I strength train twice a week, and I tend to do it on days when I've worked hard. So the days that I've done a session, obviously it will be individual when people have time to do it, but that's kind of what works best for me. And yeah, I found being in that routine's been really beneficial, and following a strength plan has just kept me accountable rather than kind of wandering aimlessly in the gym, not really knowing what I'm doing. So yeah, I've kept it twice a week, and that makes me feel good.
Thank you, Aidan. Keeping us honest with the gym work.
Rose, so do you cross-train, or have you cross-trained in the past, and would you recommend it? How would you incorporate cross-training into your training plan?
My cross-training's kind of changed. I used to do quite a lot, but that was because I started out from a pretty low mileage base and basically didn't want to build up my mileage too quickly, because that's how you get injured. So instead I supplemented it with quite a lot of cross training. But as I've been able to just build up my mileage gradually over the years, I've decreased the cross training. But I still do, even in like peak marathon build-ups, I do 1 or 2 easy bikes a week or on the elliptical. I think it's a really good way of supplementing an easy recovery run if you don't want to bump up your mileage too much. So I do it on my session days, and it will literally be like 30 minutes, super easy on the elliptical or the bike. Makes my legs feel a lot better, but means that I'm not doing crazy mileage for me, which would be kind of too much increase, and cross training is no impact, so it's kind of pretty low risk. So yeah, I think it definitely doesn't replace running. I mean, it is very different. There's a reason, you know, Tour de France winners are not also marathon runners. It is a different sport, but I do think it's a really good way to supplement where you can't do the mileage that you want to, or just to spin out the legs without the impact. So yeah, I definitely think it can be a really good approach for some people. And I mean, some people have a lot of success with lower mileage and higher cross-training volume in the marathon too. So I think it's very much one of those things that it's like so individual. It depends what your body can tolerate and just what works for you, but it's pretty low risk doing cross training. So next question, when you are training hard, does it affect your cycle? I think this is such a good question, because I think the first thing to say is that is so common with a lot of women. It doesn't mean you're like unhealthy or necessarily really overdoing it. It can just be, you're training slightly harder and your body hasn't adjusted, or you just need to increase your fueling or make sure it's around the times of your training, a bit better scheduled. So it can be like really, minimal changes to just get everything back in sync. But Steph, what do you think on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, because training definitely can affect it, but it's very important to remember that having a regular period is a sign that your body's healthy. So for me personally, so I take hormonal contraception, but something that I do is every few months I'll take a break from it to actually check, is my body working properly naturally? Because taking hormonal contraception will mask any underlying things that your body's going through. So, you know, your in quote period when you're on contraception is not a real period. It's a withdrawal bleed. It's a withdrawal bleed. So yeah, it's kind of important maybe just to like take a break every now and then just to check that your body is working as it should. And yeah, if you are missing your period for a long period of time, definitely go get it checked out, because it's probably a sign that you might be like training a bit too hard or not fueling sufficiently for your training. But don't panic, kind of, you know, it's not going to be forever. There are simple changes you can do to get it back.
Yeah, nice. And that leads quite nicely on to some nutrition questions. What should I eat before and after a run to avoid stomach pain? I mean, we're both big porridge girls, so I would always say oats before a run. I think it is, I would like oats or just toast, something plain.
Yeah, I think keeping it super simple and just almost trial and error of what works for you as well. I think you almost train your gut a lot of the time, to the point like I can have a bowl of porridge very soon before I go out for a run now, whereas maybe a few years ago I would feel sick doing that. Just not having like loads of ingredients that are going to make you feel sick, just keeping it simple carbs before. And I think, as we've spoken about on other episodes, getting fuel in quickly after your run or session, some carbs and protein.
Yeah, I think for after a run, like a shake can be really, I always find shakes really easy to digest because it is just hydrating as well. So I do think a good shake can be really good. But I have to say, this is not necessarily a sponsor plug, but I've really noticed that since having the VELOFORTE ones, I used to really struggle, and I didn't really notice until I switched, with artificial sweeteners after I run, which are in a lot of shakes. I used to have, I can't remember which one it was, to be honest, but one of the like big branded ones, and it had like aspartame K or something in it. Anyway, those sweeteners used to really rest with my stomach after a hard run. So yeah, maybe try and avoid that.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because also with VELOFORTE bars, again, I don't mean to plug a sponsor, but I genuinely think this too, that you can have them so soon before running. And like, I think other bars, I'll get a stitch or I don't know, like I'll just feel really horrible if I had one before a run. Whereas I do think those bars, because every ingredient is real and it's not artificial, I think it just works very well on your stomach.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a convert.
It's time to thank our sponsor for this episode, VELOFORTE.
Now, as our listeners will know by now, we are both big fans of using the VELOFORTE products in our training. And I have to say, Steph, I had a really hard session today, and all I could think about in those last couple of reps was having a malto shake at the end. The cold cinnamon and vanilla shake at the end of a hard session just hits differently.
Oh, it tastes so good, doesn't it? I've been absolutely loving the energy chews. They're a great alternative to gels, and I've been using them on those longer runs, especially in my training for Two Oceans. They came in very handy and they're so delicious. I love the apple and cinnamon flavour.
And the best bit is, because VELOFORTE uses only real food ingredients and nothing artificial, you can trust what you're putting in your body, and it digests so much better to synthetic alternatives.
And you can understand every ingredient on the back, which is not always the case with these types of products.
Thanks to VELOFORTE for supporting this podcast. And if you would like 30% off the VELOFORTE products, head to veloforte.com and use the code 5miles at checkout. Then during a run or race, what fuel do you take?
That will definitely depend on the length of the run or the race. I mentioned earlier practicing your fueling for your race, so kind of replicating it in some of the long runs if you're training for a marathon. But yeah, I would tend to aim for like at least 60 to 90 grams of carbs an hour in a marathon or further, because yeah, doing that at regular intervals is just going to keep your energy levels consistent, and you definitely need to practice that in training, because you know, it's not going to be good on the stomach if the first time you do it is in your race. And I use SIS gels, just always have done, as well as their carb electrolyte powder if I'm got drinks as well. What about you, Rose?
Personally, I find gels I find them a lot harder to shake than drinks, I have to say. I think it's just because they're so concentrated. I think if anyone is listening to this and struggles with fueling during a run, drinks are maybe a better place to start, because they are just, you can also dilute them, so it's a lot easier to tolerate. But I know that's tricky for a lot of people, because in a marathon you might not get the drinks that you're using. But maybe a good way to build up to it.
Okay, so we've got a few questions on mindset and motivation. So do you ever have days where you don't want to run?
Yes, all the time. No, actually, like honestly, genuinely not that frequently, because there are some days when I'm like, oh, I don't feel good, but I know I will always feel better after I run. And if the alternative is, I think it's so easy to think about like, oh, the fact that you don't want to go and do it, but like, what's the alternative if you don't do it? Like, how are you going to feel if you don't do it? And I know if I don't do it, I will feel so much worse. And I get to like, if I haven't been out the door, I'm a bit like my spaniel Willow. Like, if I have not been out the door by like 10:30, I just turn into this absolute horrible human to be around. Like, I need to get out. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a bit hard. I think when it's bad weather, I have to say I'm a bit precious about the cold and the rain, and it can be really hard to get out in the dark. My focus is always thinking like, I know I'm going to feel better, and I know I'm going to feel terrible if I don't go. So it's never really that big a decision, I don't think. I do just love running.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think once you're out, I know I'm going to enjoy it. It's sometimes just getting out the door. But I did find it funny the other day, one of my old school friends who runs was talking to some other friends and kind of made the comment, oh, Steph, you probably never feel this way. But she was like, do you ever just like, you're just not in the mood to go for a run? And she's talking to other people. And I interrupted, I was like, yes, of course I feel that way too. Like, we're all the same. You have days where you just don't want to go. But yeah, I think reminding yourself that you know you're going to feel good once you're out, and you're so right about you're much more likely to regret not going out.
Yeah, and linked to that, we've got someone else saying like getting out of bed in particular is really hard, and how do you get past that barrier? I can definitely relate to this, because when I was working full time, I remember just setting my alarm for like 5:50 and it would go off, and just dragging myself out of bed in the dark was so difficult. But I literally just had to force it. Like, I would put my phone on the other side of the room, so I had to get out of bed and get it. And then once you're up, like, you're not going back to bed, so you might as well just go for a run. I think just like doing little things like putting your kit out, so it's just one less barrier, and just get out the door, or, you know, make a promise to yourself that you can have a nice coffee at the end of it. Like, go and get that coffee from the coffee shop. And it's just about finding those really little things that just force you out the door, because as we've said, like, once you're out, it's fine. It's literally just getting out the door.
Yeah, I know. I used to have the same when I'd be in the office 5 days a week. My alarm was also at 5:50, and it never gets easier, the waking up process. But one thing for me is, I guess this was also quite lucky, is I found sort of a group of people that lived locally who were also running before work. And so just knowing I was meeting people made it so much easier. But yeah, I think, Rose, you gave some really good tips for if you're just, I guess, running on your own, how it's just going to get you out of bed and get you out the door.
And what about starting running or getting back into it after a break? I mean, like, getting back into it after a break is so hard. I honestly think it's one of the most humbling experiences. Even after a marathon that's gone really well, and, you know, you won't have lost that much fitness, but I feel like running can be so so humbling when you were just so far off what you used to do. But I think a lot of that is just accepting it and reframing it and knowing you will get back there. And like, it is part of gaining fitness is going through the process of getting there and building up gradually and going through that process where you're not as fit as your peak, because you can't stay there. It's completely unsustainable. So I think just kind of accepting where you are, and like, if each day can just be progress, then that's great.
I mean, I think also you can see it as your own little challenge as well, because if you're starting out again, that's kind of the baseline, and you know, consistency again, you're only going to improve. So I think it's almost quite nice to just have that base and then every week tick off something and you'll just see that progress again. So it's actually quite a nice journey to be on, and I think that's quite motivating to keep going, just knowing that you will progress again.
Yeah, that's such a good way to look at it. I love that. Okay, a few kind of personal questions. I say personal, just, I mean, relating to our running. We're really not going that deep here. But goals for Valencia. What are you thinking?
I mean, yeah, it's a good question because it's actually still so far away. Valencia Marathon's not till the beginning of December, so by no means am I in the block for that yet. And I don't tend to decide my, like pace goals until very soon before the race, because I have no idea how the block of training is going to go or what shape I'm going to be in. I mean, hopefully it will all be great and I can, go for a good time. But at the moment, I think it's just about kind of enjoying the process and just having a really positive experience. I know a lot of people doing Valencia, so I think it's going to be really fun, and I'm hoping that, I can link up with a few people to kind of run the marathon together, which is actually something I've never done before. I've always kind of been solo, and I really want to have an experience where I can run with people that I perhaps know and like share the work and like push together. Okay, Rose, how are you containing your excitement going into the Olympics?
It's just come around so quickly. I'm not sure I've like fully thought about it, but yeah, I leave very soon. I mean, by the time this episode is out, I will be leaving the next day, which is very exciting. I think honestly, I'm not containing it. Like, I'm not trying to contain it. I just want to like live in the moment, and I want to feel that excitement. I think it's so easy because obviously I want to do well. Like, it is a lot of work, and you're kind of so focused on the training and the training block and like getting everything right. I think sometimes it's almost you like lose the bigger picture of like, it's the Olympics. It's going to be so cool to be there. So I think it's almost the other way around. Like, I'm trying not to lose sight of that and lose sight of the excitement of going. Although of course I still need to be like super focused on training and getting everything right. But yeah, it is going to be an insane experience. I think when I'm there, that's when the excitement levels are going to be super high. But for now, it's just like keeping everything together, getting the last bits of training done, and yeah, just getting as ready as I can be.
So exciting. But I can imagine that it is easy to kind of lose sight of the bigger picture, because at the end of the day, you're still doing your job and you're trying to train as hard as you can to perform the best you can. So I can imagine you kind of lose sight of how exciting the Olympics actually is. But yeah, hopefully when you're there, you can just soak it all in and just enjoy the experience. And I know you've prepared super well, so it will be fun.
I can't wait. I just can't wait to like meet so many people in different sports. It blows my mind how many sports there are in the Olympics, and you're literally surrounded by the world's best in every sport. It's so cool.
And you get to trade badges with different countries.
Oh yeah, that would be great. I've got my badges ready. They are ready to go. Okay, so I don't really know who this is aimed at, but are you tempted by triathlon? Well, now Joe has become a pro cyclist after his hip surgery, hasn't he? So, I mean, by the amount he's cycling, he's basically pro by my level.
Yeah, pro by my level. But you know what? Like, I I feel like if I could train for cycling, I could be all right at it, but I have no interest in swimming, I have to say. I couldn't enjoy anything less. So I am not tempted by triathlon. I would do a duathlon though, but yeah. What about you? Because you've done some triathlons, haven't you?
I actually, I really do enjoy triathlon, but I'm not sure. I hate swimming. I really hate swimming, but I quite like it in the race. Like, I like the swimming in the sea because you're going from A to B and it's kind of a bit of an adventure. And I think the other thing with it is, like, I know I'm crap. So there's literally no pressure because my aim is not to drown and that's it. So I actually quite enjoy it in the race. I just have no interest in training for the swimming bit. Cycling, I love cycling. That's one thing I really miss in marathon training is my cycling. So yeah, I would definitely do another triathlon. I did a half Ironman and I loved it. I want to do another one. I'm not sure I've got the guts to go for a full one, but it'd be my holiday after the Olympics. Do a half Ironman. No, I won't if my coach is listening to this. That's a terrible idea.
Okay, so what about life after running? Would you ever go back into law?
I get asked this so much. I don't think I will. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but I just honestly feel like there's so much out there, and having changed my career once, it's like, well, there's so many things that you can enjoy doing. I don't know, I've just really changed my perspective on careers. I know it's kind of difficult because you work so hard in a career to build up, but then I'm like, why would I go back to law when I can do so many other things? I mean, obviously I would be starting out with very little experience, but I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean I could do so many other things like in an arrogant way. I'm not saying I'm amazing at all, but I just think that, like, there's so many other things I would enjoy doing that, yeah, I'm going to find something that's not law.
I also think your years in law will have given you experience that would be so beneficial in other areas anyway. So then, like, combining your passions with that experience, there's just so many opportunities out there.
We'll see if running hasn't killed all my brain cells in the process, but hopefully I've got a few years left in running before I've got to figure out that problem.
Yes, fingers crossed.
I have one question. The last two questions I love. Okay, running with dogs. Did you pick a breed specifically to run? Absolutely, I did. I mean, if Willow couldn't run, she'd be sent back. Luckily, she's very good at it. But I didn't really train her, to be honest. I think she loves it. Like, she's definitely my dog. She just, like, loves running. So I didn't really have to train her because she just kind of did it. But I did build her up really gradually. I mean, apparently you shouldn't really run with them before they're a year old because their joints aren't fully developed. So if you're getting a puppy, then you really do have to, like, wait for a year till you can run with them properly. But I would say at about 8 months, I started taking her just on, like, 2 miles. She'd come with me for, like, half a double and she got into it. But yeah, working Cocker Spaniel, I mean, from my experience, she's great. Nelly runs too, doesn't she? A little less enthusiastically, I'd say.
Yeah, so Nelly's a cockapoo, and I'd say she's probably more the poo than the cocker. She does run, yes, physically, but I wouldn't say she's a runner. She's very good at chasing a ball, and she will run with me if I make her because she's just too loyal and doesn't want to be on her own and left behind. So she'll just follow until I tell her we can stop. But I don't think she enjoys it like Willow does, unfortunately. But that's okay.
Poor Nelly.
Poor Nelly.
Okay, and last question. I love this one. When is Jess Hull coming on the pod? We need to get Jess Hull on the pod. Jess, if you're listening to this, come on the pod. You're in demand.
You know what? I fully believe she will be a guest on the pod. And I know that she definitely spends some summers in London. So I've seen her many a time in Bushy Park. So yes, I am sure she will be in London at some point and we will get her on.
Fantastic. Right. That's the goal. And that is a wrap on the questions. Thank you so much to our listeners who have sent in so many great questions. And we hope we've given you some good answers and helped you all on your training journeys. We will be back in a couple of weeks. We're having a short break over Paris, only literally 2 weeks. And then we'll be back with a bang with a Paris debrief.
Exciting.
Re-listen to an episode in the break, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait.